Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Sandeman Street podcast, a podcast about Dundee and Dundee United from fans of both clubs. As usual, my regular co-host Jack is with me. How are you, Jack?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. And if you were listening last week, and if there was a few people, you'll know that we're having our Derby special this week. So Martin's back.
How's it going, guys? It's good to be back on the podcast.
We've not been away that long.
Good to hear your dulcet tones.
And also Neil. Neil is my cousin, and he's joining me as the Dundee side of things. How are you, Neil?
Good, thanks. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
So we'll do plenty moaning than the family side of things. Just before we start, if you're listening on YouTube, could you give our video a like and subscribe and follow us on our socials? On Twitter, we are at SandemanSTPod, and on Instagram, we are the Sandeman Street Pod. So we'll get things cracking. Dundee away to Kilmarnock at the weekend. Jack, did you see any of that game? I take it you must have watched the highlights on Sportscene or whatever.
Yeah, mate. I seen the highlights. I thought I'd seen a bit of the stats. I don't know what the whole game was like, but it looked somewhat even from the highlights. I seen Dundee got their goal chopped off. Probably the right call. I think he's just mistimed it. But I think it was probably a good performance overall. The passage of play leading to that goal that got chopped off was solid. So they seemed to pass it about well. So I think it was probably a fair result looking at the stats and the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a bit of an improvement. You could see that Danda's definitely going to be a bit more creative in the midfield for Dundee. Especially, you could see that he was right involved within the goal, and as you say, it was a good build-up. All in all, it was a pretty turgid watch, in all honesty. I mean, it wasn't as bad as what a lot of people were saying on the radio, but we'll get to that a wee bit later on. The first half was probably better than the second half from a Dundee point of view. Neil, you watched the game on the TV. What did you reckon?
It was a half-decent start. As you mentioned, Jan Danda, he'll take a wee while to get up to speed of things, which was to be expected, of course. A tough watch towards the end. I would have said Kilmarnock, definitely better side over the 90 minutes. Kilmarnock obviously started not bad this year, a couple of good results, and as Jack put it, probably a good point in the end. I would have said, under Tony Docherty last 2 years.
But you're losing that game under Tony Docherty, aren't you?
100%, and a lot of goals as well. So as much as it's not been great so far going forward, definitely the defensive side of things is a massive improvement, which had to get addressed this season.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely seeing vast improvements in the structure of the team, and I've touched on this a lot over the past few weeks, that especially you've seen it at Rangers, you've seen it on Saturday, you even seen it in the Hibs game as well, that the structure of them defensively has definitely been worked on. You can see that they're improving on that week on week. It's just the going forward now that needs to be addressed, and I think that'll come. The boy they signed on loan from Swansea, he was well sought after in the lower leagues in England, so I think he'll be a good addition. And then obviously Jan Danda, we've all seen him playing up here. He's a player for a team of our level that's definitely going to add quality. So once he gets a few games under his belt, I think he's definitely going to be a great addition. And then obviously there could be players as well coming in before next week's deadline of the transfer window. Stephen Presley keeps promising us all these players, so hopefully we get at least 2 or 3. Martin, I don't know if you've seen any of the game on Saturday.
I didn't see any of the game, but I did look at the stats on Flash Score at full time just to see what the game was looking like on paper. And certainly, what Neil was saying and yourself, you seem to have showed up at the back a wee bit. And I heard sort of some Dundee fans saying that, going forward, it probably wasn't the most inspiring performance, but you really seem to have plugged those holes that you had at the back last season. So, you've definitely got that issue sorted, which I think was a major talking point last season, because you shipped some amount of goals last season, and if you want to stay up and achieve anything this season, you can't let that happen again, which is looking at the moment like that might not be the case.
Yeah, I mean, Clark Robertson started the season very well for me. He's the man in the middle of the back three, and he's probably he is the most experienced out of the three of them that are there. And I mean, you're talking about three boys, and not so much Luke Graham. Luke Graham's the young guy. He was on loan at Falkirk last season. He's came in and he's impressed, especially for the age he's at. But Ryan Astley was there last year, so these are players who were already in the building. Samuels has been playing left wing back, so it's amazing. And I don't think Tony Docherty and the staff that were with him are necessarily bad coaches. I mean, Tony Docherty's had a lot of good jobs in Scotland, so he's clearly got something about him. But he just didn't seem to be able to organise them defensively. They were far too open. Over 100 goals in 2 seasons is just not good enough. But Stephen Presley and his staff have definitely managed to sort that out. And as I say, with predominantly the same players. I mean, I think he's only signed one centre half, and he can't get anywhere near the team. So it's promising signs. I mean, if you were to ask every Dundee fan what they were thinking after the Alloa Cup loss, you were thinking 100% relegated. I don't know about you, Neil. I'm probably a more optimistic Dundee fan, and even I was worried.
Yeah, it was. It was a tough watch and tough to see, because the League Cup, you guys have touched on it with Martin previously in your podcast episodes. I quite like it personally. For the big teams, it's great because it's an excuse to get a few games under your belt against the so-called weaker teams. Didn't work out this year for Dundee, of course, but they can also lure you into a false sense of security, as in you could be, giving these teams 4 or 5, and Dundee did that last year, and they thought they were made, thought they were going to have a great season, and it didn't turn out that way. So maybe it's the kick up the backside we needed. Things have definitely improved, and we've still got a long way to go, but especially after the Rangers game, Stephen Presley saying the right things, doing the right things, and yeah, just like you say, a lot to improve on, but hopefully it continues.
I mean, the appointment of at the beginning was, and I don't think there was any Dundee fans who wanted Stephen Presley as the manager, and then he was obviously on his holidays, and then his first press conference, he had a poor quote. And I get what he was meaning with what he said, but the quote was poor in terms of saying, if you're wanting somebody who wins cups and stuff, I'm not your man. Everybody kind of understood what he was meaning by that, but it was a poorly worded quote. But I've been impressed with him. I don't know what it is about him. You could see with your own eyes every week. Every week it's getting more and more, it's getting better and better. As we've said though, it's just that last bit, and it's the hardest bit in football, is to put the ball in the net. They weren't great in the second half. They were better in the first half on Saturday. You know what? I really like the boy Wesley.
Yeah, bags of energy, as you would expect off a young guy like that. Going back to Presley, what turned it for me big time was the interview after the Rangers game. Now, everybody from a Dundee persuasion was frustrated. The penalty that was not a penalty, or was a penalty, depending on which side of the fence you lie on. But Tony Docherty last year would have come out going crazy at the refs, and he would have been well within his rights to have done that. But Stephen Presley took a really calm, collected approach after that, and instead of blasting the officials, which we all did, group chats.
Well, I think it was never a penalty.
Yeah, and that's right. But what he did was he praised the players first and foremost, and yeah, for me it was just refreshing. For somebody that likes to moan about the refs and the officials, I just thought, fantastic. That really sort of swayed me in Presley's favour after that. Obviously the result helped massively, but yeah, that was the turning point for me with Presley.
I mean, the thing is, he's no muggy. I mean, people forget he done a half decent job at Falkirk. He got headhunted for Coventry. I mean, Coventry weren't in the position they were in that are now, where they're flying in the Championship. I think they were probably League 1 or League 2 at the time. But they're a big club. Being headhunted them there. He's had a few other jobs in England where it's not really worked for him. But I mean, he didn't get jobs at clubs like Brentford doing the role that he was doing. If you're a mug, I mean, the player development role or whatever it was he was doing. I mean, like Brentford and Brighton in the past few years.
Premier League, club now.
I mean, Brentford and Brighton in the past few years have been got so many plaudits for the way that they recruit players, and then obviously once they're there, they then develop them and then they sell them on for, like Emblemo is just the most recent example. Ivan Toney before him. Yeah, so they've obviously got staff who are doing the good job, and he was part of that. So he's definitely no mug, and you could see that within his team. The boy Longwell, who's in the staff, has come with good pedigree, so they've certainly got good coaches there. So there's no reason for them to not kick on, in my opinion. They just need to get a bit more, more going forward. I think it's the area of where Jan Danda will probably play in forward, because Simon Murray's going to score if you give him the chance. So they didn't really need. It's not really like they're crying out for a goal scorer as such. They just need somebody to get the ball to him.
A creative player, and I think we will have that in Jan Danda. Well, at least I hope so. Once he's up to speed, and the new Welsh guy will hopefully add a bit more, attacking flair, creativity, which we're absolutely crying out for in that middle of the park. No doubt about it.
So I'm not forgetting about you two Arabs over there, Martin. What about with the rest of the weekend? Did you see it? I know the United were obviously not playing due to Aberdeen's incoming European tie, but did you see any of the other fixtures at all? We'll run through the scores in just a second.
Pay much attention. I did have a look at the fixture sort of at half time on Saturday and Sunday full time, and there was a few real stickouts there. You're looking at what was going on at Tynecastle, you're thinking, oh my god, look at this score here. Like, Hearts are a team that are tipped to finish third this season, a team that are looking really strong, getting beat. I think they were 3-0 down to Motherwell at one point, and then they've clawed that back to 3-3. So that was an absolute comebacks for them to rescue a point. And from what I heard, they were unlucky not to get a winner. And obviously, I think the big talking point from the weekend is what was going on in Paisley. Another weekend of joy for the Rangers, which is always good to see.
Well, just before we bring in Jack, we'll go through the score. So Celtic 3, Livingston 0. The United against Aberdeen game was postponed, as well as Falkirk against Hibs. As you touched on there, Martin, Hearts 3, Motherwell 3, Dundee 0, Killie 0. And then on Sunday, they had the game that you also touched on, Martin, which was St Mirren 1, Rangers 1. Now, that was the live game. Jack, I don't know if you've seen any of that. Rangers, again, failing to impress. Everybody in their ante is wanting Russell Martin out. I mean, I think the boys are not hiding nothing. I know we'll not dwell too much on other teams other than their own, but Russell Martin, they didn't even want him in the first place. He was never going to get any time, and he's not had the greatest of starts, so he's now going to get even less time. What do you reckon, Jack?
Yeah, I never watched it. I never seen any of the game, but I did see all the people calling for Martin's head. Essentially, he's clearly not fit for the job there. I think he's expecting more time than he's got. I think he's trying to build things slowly there, and it's just not going to happen with that expectant fan base. So I think he is running on borrowed time at the moment. Yeah,
I think if they lose at the weekend, I don't know. I think that this new board might stick with them, but knowing Rangers as a club, they're very reactionary, especially with their big support not being too happy and voicing their displeasure. So if he loses on Saturday or Sunday, against Celtic, then I don't know. I think that could be time up for him. But we'll move on. Jack, transfer news. United, they signed the boy since our last podcast. I know that by listening and reading up on that, listening to podcasts, reading articles, he's been likened to Zlatan Ibrahimovic of all people.
I think that's purely because he's tall and Swedish.
And he come through at Malmo.
Yeah, exactly.
he got signed for an Italian team.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he's done much since he's left Arsenal. He was signed for St Gallen in Switzerland, but he's been on loan at Strømsgodset in Norway the past couple of seasons, who are fighting relegation as far as I'm aware. So it's an interesting signing. He brings a bit of height up top. We've got him on, I think it was a 2-year deal. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. Obviously we've got injuries up top, so it's a welcome addition.
Yeah, and Martin, from listening to Alan Temple on the Twa Teams podcast, he seems to think that he fits a different mould from the rest of the strikers that you have. He was saying that he doesn't think that he's more of a take the ball in, hold it off and wait for it and link in the play for the midfielders and the rest of the team. He doesn't reckon that that's necessarily the boy from Australia's strong points or the boy Waters. Obviously, you've seen a wee bit more of United since pre-season now. I mean, do you reckon that that's a gap that was needing plugged in? Is there anything else that you reckon they'll need before the deadline?
Well, I'll just start off by saying that if the boy is half as good as Ibrahimovic, I'll take him any day of the week.
Well,
Happy
that's very
days.
true.
I don't think it's a position that we particularly needed in the squad, but I think it's a position that will be welcome and will strengthen the squad. The boy Waters is a big, physical, powerful striker, and the boy Sapsford has actually turned out to be quite a different kind of player. I thought he was going to be a bit of a target man, sort of win the ball in the air, but he seems to be brilliant with the ball at his feet. You know, the way he won us that penalty in the game at Tannadice against Rapid Vienna, it was a fantastic bit of play with the ball at his feet, and then he's got through the two boys and ultimately been wiped out in the box. So if he's got a player like this new guy coming in that you can feed off of and somebody that's going to hold the ball up for him, I think that can only be a positive, because that's one thing that he hasn't really done so much as win the balls that are punted up to him, but I don't think that's really the kind of game we are playing, so we haven't been doing too much of that, which is good, because there's nothing worse than watching that kind of football, I think. But yeah, a big target man, you know, if we can get him winning the balls in the air, a big physical guy, and get Sapsford and Waters so linking up with him and feeding off him, then that could be a real good attacking option for us this season, if he can stay fit, which is the big problem if you play for United these days.
Well, they've not had their luck.
No.
Their luck's been out in terms of injuries so far this season, but I think that's purely probably because the amount of games they've had in such a short space of time more
It
than
definitely
anything
doesn't
else.
help.
I know that they've obviously got the injuries, so it might look like they need players in positions when they maybe don't because boys are injured, but what do you reckon? Is there anything that is glaringly obvious that they might need to address before the deadline?
Not really. I mean, if you're to take away all the injuries we've got a good squad, we've got a deep squad, we've got positions covered. So I don't think there is any positions that need strengthened if you've got a full strength squad. But like I say, the problem is we've got umpteen players out injured. I think 4 of them are out with hamstrings, and just I've never known so many injuries to happen this early in the season. But like you say, it's definitely down to playing all these games, fast-paced European games, league games in quick succession. But I think we've brought 14 players in so far. You can't complain at that at all. That's a good number, and most of them seem to be really good quality players. So I think recruitment-wise, there's always room for another player or two to strengthen. But I'm quite happy with the way the squad's looking. And once we get the players fit and firing on all cylinders, which I hope we can do, because that's obviously easier said than done, we've got a good squad there, a very good squad that I've got faith in.
Dundee United Nations, as they've been nicknamed,
Yeah,
for other
there's
different
players from
nationalities.
here, there, and everywhere. Aye.
What about you, Jack? You've obviously seen a bit of United as well. What new boys have impressed you, and do you reckon that there might be any need for maybe another cup signing or two before the deadline next week?
I mean, I'm always going to take extra bodies if they're available and they're satisfying quality. In terms of who's impressed me, I've been really impressed with Sapsford. I thought he was going to be a bust when we first signed him, to be honest with you. But I've been thoroughly impressed by him. He doesn't stop running. I've also been extremely impressed with Bert Esslink at the back. He's cool and composed on the ball. He just seems to be a really good defender. I really like the look of him. And then I've not minded the boy Kamara in the middle of the park as well.
A scary guy, like.
Yeah, tall, doesn't stop running, a bit awkward on the ball, it looks like. But I've been impressed with him so far. He likes to get stuck in as well, it looks like, so I'm pleased with him also.
I'll just add to that myself by saying that the boy S-Link at the back is some player. The strength and the power he's got in him, and the ability to run after defenders. He's a big guy, but he's not a slow guy. And certainly against Rapid Vienna and Kilmarnock in the League Cup, he was sliding into tackles, winning the ball, and honestly, you're watching it thinking there's no way he's going to get that, and somehow he gets the ball away from the attacker. He, in my opinion, signing of the summer for us. And Kamara as well in the middle of the park, big guy, strong, gets the ball and runs at players. A real addition to that midfield.
Obviously, you guys all know far more than me, and I've seen more than United than I have. I really like the boy Waters from what I've seen. He's really impressed me, and I just find it amazing. I think me and you spoke about this maybe a week or two ago, Jack. I find it amazing how you could get a boy like that on loan for a team like Barnsley. Like, Barnsley are in League One in England, and this boy's coming in signing for United and scoring goals in Europe. It just shows you the depth and the quality of English football, doesn't it? I mean, teams like Barnsley are able to send a boy up and he can play like that in European football. And obviously, it's the Conference League, and it's all relative, but I mean, it's amazing. But bringing you back in, Neil, and what about the signings so far? I mean, I think we're all the most eye-catching signing so far we've had has probably been Danda. But out of the new boys, who have you been impressed with?
Yeah, in terms on paper and experience in the league, and just that bit of a flair player. Everyone loves a flair player, obviously. Jan Danda stands out, but the Aqua signing is a strange one. He played the first couple of games, and for a real big lad, he's got quite a bit of decent composure and really good feet. I noticed that at the Bonnyrigg game, and yeah, I understand it's against Bonnyrigg, but for a big like that on a not so good pitch, throw the ball, play about, I thought he was going to be a real good signing, but he seems to have fallen massively out of favour, especially during with the league campaign being kicked off. So a wee bit disappointed at that. That might come good eventually, I don't know, but for me, Jan Danda and the boy Luke Graham, I think, feels like a new signing.
Yeah.
And obviously that year down in the Championship with a winning team is obviously going to help his development massively. He's got a kick on. Now, this is his year. He's the one I think we're going to get a lot out of. If he can kick on, this is his year, and he has to make a statement now. It's kind of do or die for him at this level, and I think it will be do rather than die.
I mean, if you look at Luke Graham's career path, he's had the absolutely perfect loans. He was at Lochie United, and then he went to Albion Rovers in League Two. Then he was at Montrose League One, Falkirk for the Championship, and then he's in the SPL with Dundee or the Premiership. Yeah. So I mean, he's worked his way up through the levels, and he's definitely looking like he looks very confident, and I've been very impressed with him. I mean, he started a couple of games last season. I think he played in 2 derbies actually, funnily enough, in the derby special that we're having tonight. But
he got crucified a wee bit in the. It was a bit of a. You got kind of thrown into the fire a little bit the first game of the season last year.
Yeah. He's here, there, and everywhere, wasn't he?
It's so hard for a centre half, a young centre half, to come in and really make an impact in a what we call the big boys team, and it's hard to make that jump up as a centre half or just a defender in general. I think it's a lot easier to make that step up, I believe, in midfield or maybe up front, but. Yeah, he's went the right path, as you said, Andrew, through all his loan spells, and it seems to be paying off, and long may it continue.
I mean, you look at he played in the derby at Dens that United won last season, and United's second goal, the winner that night, was a joke goal from Dundee's point of view. One long flick over the top, and Kevin Holt's through. Kevin Holt was playing centre half, and he's down our right hand side. And then Dalby nips in front of Graham. You could say Graham should be goal side. I think Kevin Holt should be able to get to that ball and cross it in. That they were completely, the setup of that Dundee at that moment in time was a complete joke. I mean, obviously it was great for United. I'm not taking anything away from that. He's obviously got things to learn, and he will learn, especially playing in the top league in Scotland, and hopefully he'll be the next one where we could sell on, but this time get a fee for him. Well, he's obviously been offered a new deal. He's under contract for another year and a half, so let's hope that he adds on to that, and then when we sell him, we can actually get some decent dough for him as opposed to development fees.
That's where United stand out massively for me over the years. They've conducted their academy, and the business that they've generated from their academy players is, you can look at nothing but jealousy through green eyes at that, because it's they've done it so well over the years for a long time now. They do seem to just churn sort of gem after gem a wee bit. It has dried up a little bit. It's not quite as a conveyor belt as what it once was. But yeah, Dundee got to take a leaf at United's book in that front.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had a bit of a lull. Martin and Jack will probably be able to answer that better than me. I mean, they've brung through a few boys recently. I think the boy Sturton's been playing a few games, and they had a bit of a lull from when they were bringing boys like Goodwillie and Russell and Gold and Armstrong and boys like that through. I mean, I think every one of them played for Scotland, so
getting good money for them.
And I mean, you're not going to be able to bring through boys like that consistently. I mean, Armstrong's went and played for Celtic and won trebles. Played in the Champions League. Played for Southampton. Played it for Scotland at the Euros. Gold's went and forged a different type of career for himself, but he's had a good career. Russell, similar to Gold. I mean, played for Derby for a wee while. Who else did I say? Goodwillie. Well, not speak about him. But yeah, going back to the transfers, just before we move on to our next subject, I've really been impressed with the boy Callum Jones, the boy in the middle of the park. You had to play slightly deeper on Saturday because Digby's injured, and you had to play the Digby role as such. And he was a bit limited going forward because he had to sit and protect the back three. But I've been really, really impressed with him. He looks neat and tidy, and he gets stuck in, he gets about the pitch. And the boy, as I said earlier, the boy Wesley, I really like him. I think he's going to have a big season for us. He's a bit of a buzz bomb. He's a bit like Simon Murray, really. I think if him and Simon Murray are going to be the front two, because he clearly wants to play the front two, then they're going to cause defenders a lot of trouble, and they're going to be knackered after games against Dundee.
Hard to judge on that complete disgrace of a pitch at Kilmarnock on Saturday as well. I mean, it's getting to the point where it actually looks worse than Livingston's previous pitch. As you've put it before, Andrew, I think you would need a pair of shed shades almost to look at that pitch on the TV. It's that shiny. The sooner that's gone, the better. So yeah, it's hard to kind of judge the new signings on that pitch as well. Bear that in mind, obviously.
Well, we were speaking, Jack, I'll bring you in here, but we were speaking last week about that, weren't we? I mean, the three AstroTurf pitches in the Scottish Premiership, and I don't know if you've seen it, I think you probably will have, that Falkirk have actually been granted an extra year's grace, so they're allowed to use this for an extra year now.
Yeah, I seen that. It was to do, I think they said it was something like they wouldn't have been able to perform this season with the current pitch the way it was. And so they asked for permission to lay the Astro again, but then they were complaining that then they would just have to rip it up. So I think that's why they've gave them an extra year, just as a way to make some of that investment back almost.
It's an absolute nonsense, because I think Livy will be the next thing then, because Livy had to relay their pitch in the summer because their AstroTurf was that shite that they were going to be denied. I think David Martindale said it, they were going to be denied promotion unless they either put grass down or they got a better quality of Astro, because this is the last year that Astro is allowed in the Premiership. I don't know what your take, Martin, is. We've obviously not heard from you on this subject. I mean, I was saying last week that you hear the opinion all the time about a good Astro is better than a bad grass. You could make that argument when you watched like Dundee's pitch a couple of years ago, St Johnstone's last season, but I just think that you get too much of an advantage having an AstroTurf pitch when you're training on it every day. You know the uniqueness of, because every AstroTurf seems to be different, so you know the uniqueness of it, the way the ball bounces, if the ball holds up in certain areas of the pitch, whatnot. So, what do you reckon about Falkirk getting their extension and AstroTurf in general?
Well, I think it's an absolute farce that we're still playing on AstroTurf years after the initial debate was brought up, to be honest with you. I was at Rugby Park for the League Cup game, and I really am loath to use it as an excuse for us getting beat, because that absolutely wasn't the reason. But it definitely didn't help, and it definitely didn't do us any favours. You know, that the pitch, if you can call it that, was in an absolute state. It almost looked as if it was multiple different AstroTurf pitches of different ages and different materials kind of spliced into one sort of football pitch-sized bit of grass. You know, it was shiny. It looked like it was, worn down and sort of far too treaded on for being suitable to play a game of football on. It just isn't conducive to a natural game of football. And the way I see it, maybe I'm a bit blunt and a bit, old-fashioned with it, but if you're a football club and you can't maintain a grass pitch, then, what are you doing? Where are your priorities at? Could you imagine a golf club saying, we can't maintain greens and fairways, we're just going to start hitting the balls on AstroTurf? You wouldn't have it, you know what I mean? It's just a nonsense in my opinion. I haven't read into why Falkirk have had the extension. Obviously, Jack's just explained it in a good bit of detail there. And I just don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I really think that they should have had a grass pitch in time for coming up. We've all known that it's going to be going back to grass eventually. That's been out for a year or two now. The decision's been made. Surely they could have got that done in the close season. But that's the way it is it?
Yeah, I mean, Kilmarnock's has clearly been neglected.
Totally.
I think Kilmarnock's original reason for putting it down all those years ago was they've been trying to get their own training ground built for quite a few years now, and they were I think it was a bit similar to Dundee Stadium. They were getting knockbacks off the council for planning permission, and I think they've now finally got it. So the reason why they had their arse off, because they could save money on renting like other pitches for training, they just trained on their Astro. So you could see it in that way, but because I think they're now set to move into their training ground next year, which is obviously in time for them then going to put grass down, and they'll have their training facility to train in. But they've obviously just let that pitch just go down the pot because it's no great.
No, it really didn't look up to standard when I was there last Sunday. It didn't look up to standard at all. And you can see the ball doesn't bounce naturally on it. The ball, you can notice it, and you hear people around you shouting, "Ah, that pitch, that pitch." The ball doesn't bounce. The ball doesn't roll the same way it does on grass, and it's just not conducive to a good natural game of football, I think.
No, I mean, I remember the last time we were at Livingston. I don't know if you were there actually, Neil. It was with your dad, I think, and my dad. Dundee won 4-2 or something that day. It was the last time we were there, and we were probably about where our seats were. If you were to look straight ahead, we were maybe about 10 yards inside the half. So like 10 yards to our left was the halfway line, and there was like 3 or 4 different patches where they'd obviously like the pitch had ripped or there'd been a flare thrown on or whatever it was, where they dug out a square of the Astro and put a new bit of Astro like you'd put in your garden down, and you could actually see it. And you're thinking to yourself, one, is that level? And two, if a player kicks that, is the AstroTurf going to come up? Because, I mean, it's just
It's an injury
shocking.
waiting to happen.
It's shocking.
These teams obviously hold a distinct, money advantage, investment, in a pitch, obviously, especially a grass pitch, as Dundee well know, it's a lot of money. These guys are, I mean, the AstroTurf pitches are getting used 5 days a week and a Saturday, Sunday for the professional team to play on. Wraith Rovers, the lights are on. I work quite a bit out that way, and the lights are on every single night of the week. So they're generating money off that pitch 5 days a week off clubs, local clubs, which is great. I think that's fantastic. But you can't have it all. You can't be in the big league,
No.
Getting the big away supports coming to your ground, generating lots of money that way, TV money, but also having a wee side project during the week as well. You hold a distinct advantage over teams like Dundee United, St Johnstone, Hearts, Hibs, and all that kind of stuff.
Gordon Strachan put a really good point across, in that kind of on the lines of what you're speaking about. So, I mean, we all know that Gordon Strachan's prone to an oddball comment every now and again, but he said, like...
Or managerial appointment.
Well, yeah. But he said something along the lines of, he got asked about, like, your Forfars and your Montrose and Stenhousemuir and all these clubs who are community clubs, in inverted commas, who use their pitch and they make money off it during the week. The youth teams use it, blah, blah, blah. And he says, that's fine if these teams want to be community clubs, but let the big boys then be the big boys.
Yeah.
If you're a Premier League club, you should have a grass pitch, and if the community clubs can then go down the leagues and be community clubs.
I mean, look at Arbroath.
They've got a grass pitch.
They've had a grass pitch. They almost got promoted a few years back, and they would have come up with a grass pitch. Now, there's absolutely no way that these teams can continue to get away with this. Like I said just a few minutes ago, you're either a big club with a big boys pitch, or you're a small club and you want to generate money on the side through community games, and that's fine, but you can't have both. It's really as simple as that, and I'm sure by the comments I've just heard from Martin, I'm pretty sure he would agree with that.
Well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll move on. This was kind of like this next subject was a bit of I added it purely based on my experience at the weekend, and Neil and Jack, I don't know if you'll have your thoughts on it, but I know that because Martin was coming on, I wanted to speak about it because I knew that he'd have thoughts. I was coming back from the game on Saturday in Kilmarnock, and we're in the car. I usually got on a supporters bus, so you didn't usually tend to have this experience. But because I was driving, I had the radio on, and obviously it was Sports Simmed on Radio Scotland. And just how far down the tubes that has went in the past few years is, I mean, it's a bit. I mean, a lot of proper football punters in this country will probably agree with me. You'll get people who will think I'm a sado, whatever, but I used to look forward on a Saturday, if I wasn't going to the football and I was going to be listening to on the radio or whatever. You had Off the Ball at 12 o'clock, you had the Sports Simmed And then after it was that your call with Jim Traynor, and you got other Old Firm fans making a fool of themselves, which was dead funny. The first hour of Sportsman, because it would come on at 2 after Off the Ball, would be Richard Gordon, and he would have all the boys all over the country at open all mics, and you would get your team lines, you would get your manager interviews and whatnot, and then they would then have open all mics, and then after it you'd have your managerial reaction, you'd have the results from all the different reporters, and then they would move on. Sat and listened to it on Saturday, and it's just an absolute disgrace of a show. It's just Clyde One or Talk Sport. It's basically a Clyde One version of Talk Sport. It's that Kenny McIntyre, and he sits there and he tries to play off Tom English against Michael Stewart all the time. All they're wanting to do is create arguments. I mean, Martin, I'm sure you'll agree with everything I'm saying here. It's went from a football show that brings you the results to let's have an argument.
And Michael Stewart generally wins because he's actually quite an intelligent man.
Yeah, he's intelligent.
Actually, quite like hearing his opinion on quite a lot of things.
Well, bring you in, Martin. I mean, what do you think about it all? I know that you tend to listen to it when you can.
Well, I'll be honest with you, it used to be an absolute staple on my Saturday. You know, even if I was going to Tannadice when I lived in Dundee, I would have it on from about 12 o'clock to, 2 o'clock in the house, then driving to the ground, and then, getting home, driving home, getting home and listening to the sort of the post-match stuff that they would do. But I haven't listened to Off the Ball or Sports Sound for a long, long time now. Off the Ball, I'm not so sure because I like Tam and Stewart. I think they've got some good content. They're always up for a laugh. But Sports Sound itself, from what I've heard and from what I have listened to in the last couple of years, it's went right downhill. It really has since Kenny McIntyre came in. Just echoing what you're saying, it's just him provoking arguments. It really is, and that's never what the show was about. The show was all about talking football, talking points. But now it seems to be they're wanting action. They're wanting arguments between the two boys. Michael Stewart and the other guy that's on it. Michael Stewart, he's an intelligent guy, like you said, Neil. He's an intelligent guy, and he's got the capability to win a lot of these arguments. But actually, I'm not his biggest fan. I think he's quite condescending sometimes, and some of the things I've heard him say on that radio show. If it was me on it with him, I'd just be sitting there thinking, why are you saying these things? What are you trying to achieve by throwing a wee comment in like that? The format of the show just isn't what it is. It isn't what it was, sorry. And I don't know, it's just not the same. And I certainly think that there's definitely more, if this was actually possible, definitely more of an Old Firm slant on it now as well. Sometimes I'll think to myself, right, I'm not going to the football this weekend, I'll listen to it on the radio. And there have been times where there's been a couple of games on, 3 or 4 games on in the Premier League in Scotland, and it hasn't been open all mics, it's been commentary from the Celtic game or the Rangers game. And it doesn't interest me at all listening to that. If it's Celtic and Rangers that are getting the actual individual commentary, I just turn it right off again. I don't want to hear Celtic and Rangers. I want to hear your Motherwells, your Kilmarnocks, your St Mirrens. You know what I mean? That's what interests me. It's not the Old Firm.
The only time you want to hear Celtic and Rangers on the radio show is when they're making a complete and utter fool of themselves.
Totally. If they're in Europe, I'm all for listening to
it. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. You always want them to do that.
The thing that annoys me the most is that, so the first hour of the programme, from 2 until kick-off time at 3 o'clock, has to be pre-game manager interviews or assistant manager, whoever comes up for it. You have, say for example, Chick Young is at Morton against Dunfermline. You've got Rory Loy at Dundee Kilmarnock. You've got Rory Loy to bring you the team lines and the build up to the match. Dundee are bringing in this boy for this boy, and you go to Capello and you bring Chick Young in. He gives you the Morton and Dunfermline teams, and you move on to the next person, and the next person, and the next person. That's one of the things that they don't do. They'll debate Rangers having an offside VAR check from about 4 years ago, and they'll argue about that for about 45 minutes, and then they'll speak about Celtic having a throw-in, and then they'll speak about Hearts for 5 minutes because Alan Preston's there and he has to have his customary 5 minutes about Hearts. And then when the games have actually started, they start doing the team lines, and then what inevitably happens is that you'll have an early goal, so somebody will go to the person, whoever's got the early goal, and that team line will get interrupted, so then eventually they'll go back to that person, and he'll eventually give you the team lines, and you're half an hour into the game, and you didn't even know what some of the team lines are, and what changes have been made and stuff. Now, I know that we've all got phones, and we can all check that now, but that's what the radio's for. It's for reporting things when you're in your car driving, and you can't look at your phone. what you touched on there, Martin, about the Old Firm. If Celtic are at home on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, or Rangers are at home on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, they've always got the live commentary game every single time.
Yep.
And what makes it even more annoying is that not only do they have the live commentary game, they also stick someone else at the game for open all mics.
Totally.
So
And what gets me as well sometimes, if you're listening to Off the Ball, that finishes at what? 2 o'clock?
Yeah.
If there's a Celtic or Rangers game, which is the early kick-off on the Saturday, rather than going to Sports Sound and having the debate and talking about all the upcoming games, they'll finish off the commentary from that Celtic or Rangers game, which I can understand. You know, it's a game of football, get it on the radio, people want to hear football, you know, live football, but at the same time, I would much rather hear them talking about the Hearts St Mirren game that's coming up, and then the United Kilmarnock game, then the Dundee Livy game that's coming up. I want to hear stuff from all the games, not just what's going on at Celtic Park or Ibrox. And I will say something as well, I don't know if you remember this, maybe a year or two ago, I don't know if the guy Kenny McIntyre was caught saying it on a hot mic or if somebody was secretly recording him behind his back. But just before they came on air, he's sitting there and he's goading the presenters. Right, boys, come on, we're going to get fiery debate here. I want arguments. I want to hear you fiery debate. There was a bit of controversy came out about it when that recording came out. But the way the show is, it isn't like that by mistake. It's like that by design, and it must be. If it is by design, it must be what the people want, because they wouldn't be putting stuff out that people don't want, you know. But God knows, it's just not what it was. It's not as good.
No, and it's clickbait. That's exactly what it is. That's why I'm saying it's like Clyde One Super Scoreboard, but a talk sport version of that. Where Clyde One Super Scoreboard, I mean, we can't listen to it through here unless we get it online. So you through in Glasgow will be able to listen to it. Is that on every night? Do they have an hour
Clyde
or
One.
two? Clyde One Super Scoreboard.
The Clyde Scoreboard. That's on from I think about 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock every night. Driving home from work Monday to Thursday, I'm normally getting in range of Glasgow just as it's coming on. So if either of the two Arsecheeks have had a bad result on a Saturday or Sunday, it's always glorious listening on a Monday night, hearing them all phoning up and saying how they're the hardest done by a team in football, and Celtic and this, and Rangers and the SFA that. It's comedy gold, to be fair, but it's very much an emotional, fiery show compared to what Sports Sound is supposed to be and was.
Yeah, and I think, I know Jack and Neil have hardly had a word in edgeways here, but I think we'll all grudgingly admit that Celtic and Rangers, being the biggest clubs in Scotland, they've got the most fans, they have the most listeners, right? And if it was a thing like Talk Sport, where, well, they've not so much Talk Sport, but say for example it was Sky Sports or Premier Sports, they're the reason why Celtic and Rangers are always on that, because they bring subscriptions, and that's and we can all understand that, because it doesn't make it any less annoying, but we can understand it. Whereas with the BBC, it's licence payers, and if you're a Ross County fan, or you're an Aberdeen fan, or you're a St Johnstone fan, you would never feel like you're getting any money's worth from your licence fee, when every single time your game is completely ignored for whoever Celtic or Rangers are playing. And that's what annoys me. Like what I was saying earlier about how they'll have the commentator and the co-commentator doing the live match, and they'll do another presenter there who does the open all mics. They didn't need somebody there doing open all mics. If Celtic or whoever Celtic are playing score, or vice versa with Rangers, just introduce the commentary into open all mics. And then you could send whoever's going to be there to another game. And the last thing I want to say on this, right, and it's what really boils my piss about this, right, is, and you see it on Sky now as well, if in England, if Liverpool are playing, it's Jamie Carragher. If Man United are playing, it's Gary Neville. And see if they're playing against each other, like what they will do. If Liverpool are playing Man United, they'll have Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher both doing co-coms. And in my opinion, that's fine, because it's levelling off against each other. But if Man United, for example, on Saturday are playing Fulham and Gary Neville's doing the co-coms, everyone knows that he's wanting Man United to win. And he's sitting there in the background going, oh, and they're scoring. Open all mics is exactly the same. And I touched on Alan Preston earlier on. He is never not at Tynecastle. Packy Bonner is always at Celtic Park. Neil McCann or somebody like Stephen Thompson will be at the Rangers game. Stephen Craigan will be at the Motherwell game. It's always the same people, because they also. So if you've got Like, for example, Motherwell being at Tynecastle on Saturday. Alan Preston's not very excited when Motherwell are scoring, but when Hearts are equalising, he's going off his nut.
Totally.
And people didn't pay for the licence fees for this, eh?
Totally.
But,
There's definitely bias with the commentators sometimes. I mean, I remember United played Celtic in a semi-final. Scottish Cup, Hampden, 2013 maybe, and we got beat 4-3. Cracking game of football. United were unlucky. Celtic were the better team. But a United player, I can't remember if it was maybe Mackay Stephen or whoever, got absolutely wiped out in the Celtic box. Packy Bonner's on the radio. It's good that the referee never gave a penalty because it added to the atmosphere. Nonsense. That's not nonsense commentary. If that's your opinion, you shouldn't be commentating on a game of football because that is the most biased, tinted thing you've ever seen. It's just nonsense.
anyway, after the rants that we've had, we'll move on. We'll bring Jack back in because I've not heard his voice in a wee while. Jack, we're build up to the weekend now. What's your thoughts going into the derby? I know that yourself and Martin, without season tickets, haven't managed to get tickets, so it'll be the TV for you boys. But what are you thinking going into Sunday's game?
I think it'll be a good game. I think there'll be goals for both sides. I think United have been rubbish at the back so far outside of S-Link. Conceded, I think, 2 goals every game so far this season. So if Dundee don't score at least one, I'd be surprised. But we also seem to be pretty strong attacking this year. I think Dundee are seeming more strong, robust defensively this year compared to last. So I think both teams will score. I'm going to go a 1-1 draw with maybe a late equaliser.
Okay. And Neil, me and Martin have had a bit of a rant. You did share your opinion a couple of times with the radio. What do you reckon for the weekend?
It's a tough one. I think, although Dundee on paper seem to have quite a decent record in the last 10, maybe 11, 12 derbies, it's not as bad as what it was a few years ago, where you were going into every Dundee derby.
They've won the last 2. I mean, before they won the one at the Scottish Cup one, the end of January, they hadn't won one in a while, but there'd been loads of draws. It's a
tough one. The first one's always a nightmare to predict. I think for the neutral, for me living in Edinburgh, obviously, I talk to a lot of Hibs and Hearts fans, and they love it. I hope I'm not giving it the kiss of death now for the neutrals. I'll take a boring 1-0 Dundee win all day long, of course. But I think for the neutrals and the TV purposes, it's normally a goal fest with, plenty of incidents. But to give my prediction, I think both teams probably be happy with a draw, and I think a draw of some kind will be exactly what we'll get. I'm just to go on a wee bit different from Jack. I think a 2-2 draw. It's never a dull affair with a Dundee derby. Again, I hope I'm not kind of giving it the kiss of death there.
You could actually roles reverse it from last season. So last season, United were the team that were strong at the back. They weren't giving up much. Yeah. They were nicking games 1-0 here, there, and everywhere. And listen, they had a good season. I'm not knocking them by saying that, but then Dundee were the exciting team. And I'm saying in inverted commas, exciting team. They were scoring goals all over the place, but they couldn't stop conceding them either. Whereas now,
erratic, I would.
Now you look at Dundee. They're not giving much up. They've had a clean sheet in, almost. They should have had 2 clean sheets in a row if they didn't give away the penalty Ibrox. They've shored that up, but they can't score a goal now. So it seems to be roles reversed from last year. Bringing you in now, Martin, I take it you don't have a ticket, but what do you reckon? What's your plans for Sunday, and what do you reckon for the game?
No ticket for me. I think it's going to be a pub watch. If I can find a pub in Glasgow that's doing the game, which I've got no doubt there will be one. But echoing what Neil and Jack have been saying, just who knows? It's definitely too close to call. I think United are looking good going forward, but we've got a lot of players that are out injured who are attacking players. I wouldn't say we're leaking goals at the back, but we're conceding a fair amount of goals at the back, and they're a goal of a certain type as well. So if Dundee have figured that out, or figure out in the derby and can exploit it, there's definitely opportunities there. But there's always action, there's always goals. I'm going to go for a 2-2. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think United have got goals in them, but I think our defence has got a couple of leaks in there that Dundee can probably exploit as well. I hope I'm wrong. I never want to go into a derby saying I'll take a point, I'll take a 2-2, but I think this early in the season, with the amount of injuries that we've got in attacking positions, whether we've got enough to break yous down and, plug the defensive gaps that we seem to have at the moment, I really don't know. I'm going for a draw. I think that's the safe bet at the moment.
I think we're both teams quite a bit off the finished article, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Particularly Dundee, as I don't obviously see near as much of United as you guys do, but yeah, Dundee. This is another stepping stone in the right direction. As long as it's not a draw, and we should have got beat draw rather than a draw, and we possibly could have nicked it. That's something going in the right direction, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. I hope for a win, of course I do, but yeah, I totally agree with you, Mark. It's a hard one. First game of the first derby of the season.
I think if we didn't have as many injuries as we did, I'd be more than confident that we'd go in and we'd win the game. I'm not saying we'd keep a clean sheet, but I think we'd have the firepower to sort of outscore you in the derby at least. So who knows what the score could be if that was the case. But with the injuries we've got, I just think we're going to struggle going forward. We've got a lot of attacking players: Waters, Trapanovsky, Sapsford that are out injured, and it's a big miss for the squad.
The boy Waters, I know you touched on it earlier. I saw quite a bit of the game in Rapid. He is.
That was the one that was live on BBC, the away game.
Yeah. And I was very impressed with him. He's almost got that butcher type
Physique.
mentality and physique.
He's got that look about him. He's a big physical presence in there. He moves about in the box well. He can win headers. You've seen that against Rapid in the home tie. Yeah. He's a really good player. He's the kind of player that you'd love to have on a permanent, and you just fear that you fall in love with him, because you know what they say: never fall in love with a loan signing. But he's a real strong. One. Totally, he's a real strong powerhouse attacking player. But like I say, he's not going to be much use on the injury table on Sunday, sadly.
And Jack, going into Sunday, obviously we've touched on a few times now that United do have their injury troubles. Is there any of them that are looking likely that are going to be back? And I know that Derby week's never the best week for that, because it was always Johnny Russell back in the day. Johnny Russell was injured for 6 years, and then all of a sudden he's Lazarus and he's playing against Dundee. So is there anybody looking likely that they might be back in time for the Derby?
I've not heard anything. I think Namo's back. I think he came off the bench last week against Killie, so it's good to have him back. He brings a bit of depth at the wing back positions, as well as the winger positions as well up front. So he's back. Sapsford, I don't know the extent of his injury. I don't know how long he's out for. So that's the only one I really know of. So yeah.
For the Dundee side of things, I think Digby's definitely out. He's got a calf injury. I think Stephen Presley said that the build up to last week's game that he was looking at 6 weeks. Now that's a bit of a blow for me. He's never going to be the most spectacular player in the world, but he does the dirty things and that go unnoticed a lot of the time. And him being injured means that probably Jones is going to play there, and if he wasn't there, he'd be further forward and it'd free him up a bit. So yeah, that's a big miss for Dundee. My opinion on the match, I'm worried if Dundee go 1-0 down, because if they go 1-0 down and they're obviously having to chase it, I don't think the squad's ready for that yet in a game like that, where it's going to be 100 miles an hour. And it's obviously, we've been speaking about Dundee being a lot more structurally, if that's even a word, they're better set up, and they're not looking like they're going to leak as many goals as they did last season. I've got a couple of worries. One, that they go 1-0 down and then they have to chase it, and two, that it's going to be 100 miles an hour. We've all seen enough Dundee derbies in our time to know that. And if it's a 1-0 down, there's all this structure go out the window and they just go daft. What do you reckon, man? You've seen a wee bit of Dundee, I'd imagine. What do you reckon would be United's avenues into Dundee's net?
I think Dundee have had a start of the season of two halves. You had a very, very poor start of the season. Obviously, the confidence was low, and you have went into the league and picked up a couple of decent points. And I think you're a team that have got a bit more confidence about you. I think if United maybe do get an early goal and go 1-0 up, it could potentially shake you and maybe get the nerves going a wee bit. You've always got the risk, if that's the case, of then conceding a second goal quite early on, as has happened in derbies of the past. And you'll know yourself, if you concede a goal or two early doors, the floodgates can open at times. So I think that's what United have got to do. We're a team that seem to start games quite well, certainly in that first half against Rapid Vienna, the intensity and the pace and the attacking intent from the team was absolutely superb. So if we can get right at Dundee from the off and sort of shake you, get you on the back foot and get the nerves tingling a wee bit, I think that's probably our best avenue into winning that game.
Yeah, I think that United, I don't know about you, Neil, I think that United could bully Dundee. I mean,
they're a big team.
They are a big team, and even obviously they've signed Zlatan, so he's going to be up front as well, causing havoc.
That's the thing is, it's the Scottish League in a nutshell, and I'm not really wanting to, have a go at the Scottish League, but you need big lads. I think, other than your Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts and Hibs, they've got the money to splash on sort of flair players. Certainly more than what Dundee United do, and I think you do need that core of big lads, and I think United have definitely got that this year. Dundee have to a certain degree. I mean, the Clark Robertson, we touched on him earlier.
Bigger than last season, though. Yeah.
I thought we got bullied last year, and I'm kind of hoping that's going to be the opposite this year. I always think with Scottish football, it doesn't get a great rep, and sometimes that's understandable, but we all love it for our own reasons. But I think a good core, strength to the team over flair is first and foremost, in my opinion, in the Scottish League. And you take flair when you can get it.
Well, I think you can have boys like that as long as they're surrounded by the like, for example, you've got St Mirren. St Mirren had boys like Olasanya, who he was a wee guy, but he was built like a big guy. And then they have like Gogic, Marcus Fraser, the boy Killian Phillips, and Mark O'Hara. They had the boy Boyd Munce, who was the wee guy who was the creator and got on the ball and created things for them, and he was surrounded by the rest of them. And I'm Stephen Robinson's biggest fan. I say this almost every single week. I love Stephen Robinson, honestly. I think he's great.
Royalties with this boy.
I think he's a great manager. I know people take the piss out of me for licking his arse, but you're absolutely right. We see last season, if Lyle Cameron was surrounded by 2 or 3 more big boys, I honestly do reckon that it would have brought out an even better season than him. I thought Lyle Cameron was good last season, but I think that we were too wee in the middle of the park, and that was evident. And even the year before, we had Cameron, Silla, McCowan. I mean, McCowan's a great player, and so's Cameron, but they got bullied a lot in the middle of the pitch.
You need a big boy to accompany in that middle of the park, in the Scottish League, as I touched on.
And the more that I see Silla not in our team, like the more games I see without Silla being in our team, the more I actually think that we maybe overrated him.
He had a good start to his Dundee career. He was one of my favourites. He really was. But he ran about like a headless chicken. He fell over a lot,
wasn't he?
For a big tall lad, you expect a little bit more physicality of a guy like that. You mentioned the boys at Kamara in the middle of the park for United.
Yeah.
He looks exactly what I would want in Dundee's centre mid.
I think he looks like what we thought we had in Mo Salah.
Yeah.
I always thought, Salah was there for 2 years. The first year we had Boateng. I always thought that Boateng was a far better player than Salah.
Yeah.
But moving on, Jack, we'll bring you back in. My hosting skills are absolutely fantastic, by the way. Out of all the derbies, what's your derby memories? What's been your favourite derby? What's been the derby that you've not maybe liked as much? We'll kick things off for you in that regard.
My favourite derby, I've probably got to go the first 6-2 game, the New Year's Day derby, where I thought Schenk, or whatever his name was in goal, was probably not the best, and a more competent keeper could have reduced the score quite a bit, but I'll always take it as a United fan, beating your rivals 6-2. I also thoroughly enjoyed the Scottish Cup game against you when Foyut scored the header on one of the last minutes of the game. League Cup, yeah. I thought that was probably one of the mentalest I've celebrated at a game, to be honest with you. So I thoroughly enjoyed them. With regards to least favourite derby, I think I might be right in saying I don't think I've actually seen, I could be lying, I don't think I've seen Dundee beat United at a game. So, so I'm going to have to go with probably the draw, the 2-2 draw, when I think we were 2-0 up, and McPake scored the equaliser at the end.
Well, I'll go next. I think I was spent the day taking a wee bit of notes. I know that we were wanting to obviously have a derby theme, so I put together a bit of like my all the derbies I've ever been to. So on Sunday it'll be the 41st derby that I'll have seen. I've been 18 at Dens, 22 at Tannadice. Now, Martin, how many do you reckon out of the 40? What do you think the record is win, lose, and draw for me?
I probably started going to derbies when Dundee were in the Premier League before they got relegated for the 8 or 9 or 10 years, whatever it was they were relegated. I think the derbies were more of a dark blue affair back in the day. Obviously, you've been to probably every derby since Dundee got promoted back up in, what was it, 2012-13 season. 40 derbies, I'm probably going to say there's about, I don't know, there's been a lot of draws. I'm going to say maybe about 15 United wins, maybe 15 United wins, maybe 7 or 8 Dundee wins, and the rest draws, maybe.
You're not too far off. So I've seen Dundee win 10 derbies, lose 16, and draw 14. Now, see if you were to take away the season where Dundee were called Club 12 and they got promoted at the last minute because of Rangers, that was a bit of a kick in the balls to the stats. They had 5 derbies that season. I've wrote them all down here.
And you just weren't a Premier League team that season.
No, I mean, first division team in the Premier League. Environment. They had 5 derbies that season. 3 in the league, one in a friendly, and 1 in the cup. There was it was Dundee 0, United 3, United 3, Dundee 0, Dundee 0, United 3, and then Dundee 1, United 2, and then it was a 1-1 draw, which was the last one. So that's obviously significantly harmed my stats. As for my favourite, I mean, last season's when at Tannadice was up there, to be honest with you, purely because we hadn't won so long at Tannadice. It was a bit of a minter. The 2 or 3 times where we probably should have won at Tannadice and we didn't. So they turned up that day with absolutely no expectation and absolutely pumped United in the first half. And the second half was a bit more cagey, but to get that win and score 4 goals at Tannadice was good. I did like the one where we hadn't, because we'd been in the first division for donkey's years and we hadn't won a derby in a while, and the Heffernan got the Derry shot. That was up there for me. My worst one, I mean, we've had the 2-6-2 games. None of them were as bad for me as the one that Jag was on about with the big Polish centre-half scoring in the last minute in the League Cup. That was just horrendous. And I was right behind that goal, and it was at a time where we were thinking, what have we got to do to beat you lot? So, yeah, that was the last kick of the ball. We've had 10 men and we played so well. What about you, Martin? Like, what's your best derby memories? What's your worst derby memories? And I know that you often say that you didn't, because of the derbies that you've been to, Dundee, you've never really been somebody that you got worried about as such. But what's your best and worst memories?
Well, there'll be Dundee fans that are listening to this that are about to go and start screaming at their phones. Fucking cocky Arab bastard, who does he think he is? But yeah, the derby's never been a game that really I've never felt nervous in the lead up to it, because I've never really had any fear of Dundee, and I'm sure that you'd be exactly the same if Dundee were the team who had the better over United for such a long period of time. Obviously now I think there's a bit less between the teams, you know, as years have went on. Dundee have strengthened a bit, and I think United probably are another team that the were back in the day, sort of when, you know, we're winning games, we're scoring 4 or 5 goals every game we seem to be playing. But there's been plenty of good memories, some utter shite memories, and some games that are sort of neither good or bad, just really frustrating draws. I think my favourite derby of the lot has got to be the 6-2, the second one. The first one was brilliant, but I was a bit younger at the time, so I just went to the game and that was it. But the second one, I was able to go to the pub before, have a few pints with the boys I was going with, you know, a few pints after the game, and just really enjoy the atmosphere. The fact that it was under the floodlights on a Friday night as well, you know, it was chucking with rain that night. it just made it a whole lot more atmospheric, I think, you know what I mean? And the goals in the first half, it was just bang, bang, bang almost every time we went forward, we scored. And for you to have that goal chopped off in that game as well, it was a big sort of get up yet the Dundee fans that were on the pitch. So as a United fan, it just had every ingredient to make it a classic derby was in that game. I think probably my other derby memory from a derby that I really liked was a game at Dens, and a game at Dens which was 4-1 United. It was in 2014. I think Dundee got. I can't remember who the player was for Dundee that game that got sent off. I'm sure a Dundee player did, but there was a little period of time where every derby Dundee got a man sent off, and United won that game 4-1. There was a penalty. It was the boy Belatti that scored it, and he's up dancing in front of the Dundee fans. And then I think the other three goals, Dow, Morris, and Keith Watson, came in front of the United fans behind the goal at the other end of the stadium. So that was just a great one. It was a Sunday 12 o'clock kick off. It was nice and sunny. It was warm. It was just a good day out. Obviously, there's been some frustrating 2-alls in there as well. I think Jack touched on the game where James McPake scored in the last minute. It's no one that you leave feeling gutted. You just leave feeling frustrated that you were in a winning position up until, 10 minutes before full time, and you've chucked away 2 points. And then obviously there's been some absolute howler derbies. I think for me, my worst derby memory isn't actually the one in 2016 where we got relegated. It was the one last season where you won at Tannadice. Going into that, it's probably the first Dundee derby where I've thought to myself, this home record that we've got might be getting put under some pressure today. And there were mitigating circumstances that day. I'm not going to go into them because I hate sitting here saying, oh well, we only lost because of this and that. We only lost because we were the worst team on the day. You know what I mean? Dundee, that game's the best I've ever seen Dundee play, and I would argue that it's the second worst I've ever seen United play. Dundee were on fire every time you went forward that day. You looked like scoring, but no, to concede 4 at Tannadice against Dundee, it was totally unacceptable. And I think there was a few blood vessels popping out the head at that point, along with many other United fans in the stand.
And before I bring you in, Neil, there was one where I don't think you were certainly not with me. I was with your dad and my dad. It was the season actually that we got relegated at Livy, and we played United at Tannadice, and it was the last game of I think we went 9 games unbeaten against United, and it was the last game of that run before the next one was when United finally did win the game. We were 1-0 down from the first half. United were absolutely torturing us, and it was Ian McCall was the manager, and the song was...
He's one of my favourite managers, Ian McCall.
You'll never win a derby, Ian McCall, right? And
for that reason alone.
I think Tam McManus scored with about 20 minutes to go. And then maybe about 5-10 minutes later, Jim McIntyre, who always scored against Dundee, he scored with about 10 minutes to go in the Tannadice. It was at the time where Dundee got the shed, and then right along the side of the park, and then United got the 2 other sides. And the United end where they were up, and you're thinking, right, today's going to be the day type thing. Steve Lovell scored with about maybe a couple of minutes to go, and we drew 2-2, and it just felt like a win. And the reason why I remember it so well was because when United went 2-1 up, we were in the shed, and I was only about 9 or something at the time. I was standing on my seat the entire match, and Ian McCall ran, because obviously the Dundee fans are above Ian McCall in the dugout, and he ran on the pitch and turned around, and he was giving it the wanker and every the Dundee fans, and then we scored again, and he never ever ended up winning the derby. So that one sticks out for me. You're obviously a wee bit older, so you've got like memories games that I haven't been to. So what would be your best and worst derbies that you've been to?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said a wee bit older, not too much older.
No, not too much.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you, Martin, and Jack probably, and you guys were probably at a good age when United were dominating derbies, with the 6-2s and your 4-1s that you've mentioned, and there was a period where Dundee were in that position. I never saw 6-2, mind you, but I saw a lot of good wins under they call it the Benetti era, even though Benetti wasn't actually there that long.
2 seasons.
Yeah, but a lot of the players that he got and brought in continued on, and I mean, there's 2 favourites of mine. When we signed Kenichi, obviously, you guys were giving us pelters. He's over the hill. He's not very good. All that kind of stuff. And he came and scored the first that day. A lovely goal in the right hand wing there, and you guys equalised.
I don't think they did. I think it was 2-0 Dundee that day.
Was it 2-0?
Mzaji's chip was a sick goal.
Right enough. That's what I was. I mean, one of the best derby goals you'll ever see, whether you're United or Dundee or neutral persuasion.
Seen it on video, and you kind of die-hard United fan. You kind of say it was a brilliant finish, eh?
And I think it's the one and only time I would say I was lucky enough to be sitting in those old wooden seats, because it was right in front of the old stand. You couldn't get a better view, and it was just, it was a magical derby from Dundee point of view. The other one was probably the Wan Sarah hat-trick. Now, I think he goes by the wayside a lot with a lot of Dundee fans. He's always been my favourite striker of that era, probably still today, to be perfectly honest with you. He scored a hat-trick that day. I think the last Dundee player to ever... Sorry, the last...
It's the last hat-trick in a competitive Dundee derby. Yeah. There's been one in a friendly, but it's the last hat-trick in a competitive derby, yeah.
That was, again, Mzaji was instrumental that day as well. In terms of the worst, to be honest with you, I can't remember the year, but I'm pretty sure I was back in the country after living abroad for a few years, and thankfully those few years were when Dundee were getting cuffed almost every derby. So
you pissed off to Australia and America, and I had to sit and watch them all.
Yeah, I was able. Don't get me wrong. I opened up the bars and got the big TVs and that out, and they were quickly back up again. But yeah, I think I just got back in the country. We were in the shed. Johnny Russell absolutely destroyed Dundee that day. 3-0, I believe. I think it was.
Yeah, it was 3-0. Yeah, 3-0 at half time.
Yeah, I mean, there's been worse ones than that, but that just stuck out for me. That just, welcome back to the country, Neil. Welcome back to the Scottish football. Welcome back to a Dundee derby. And as I said, Martin, I was of the person. I grew up in my teens, going into Dundee derbies, never fearing United, much like you did for a number of years. And that is a very distant memory now, sadly. Recently Dundee, I think, have actually had a no bad record, even though it might not seem like it at times in a Dundee derby. But we've got a long way to go before we can start reminiscing like you boys have.
They certainly haven't been getting the Tankins the world. I mean, they go back to how long? 13 years ago they got promoted because Rangers got demoted, and they had that season. They went down, they come back up, and then the season after that, they won a derby in that season. But all the other ones that were getting doings, like they got the 4-1 at Dens, there was the 6-2 at Tannadice, another 3-0 at Tannadice actually towards the end of the season.
That season you came up was Club 12. Was that no 5 3-0s or 4 3-0s that season or something?
Yeah, there was 2 3-0s in the league. There was a 3-0 in a friendly.
Yeah.
There was John Brown's one. I think it was maybe his second match as manager. It was the 2-1 in the Scottish Cup. Dundee played really well that day, actually. And then there was the 1-1 at Tannadice where Ryan Conroy scored.
Yeah.
And
that was a nervy affair.
Those 2 seasons, the season 12-13 and 14-15, at the moment, United... Well, I mean, last season, United were better than Dundee. The league position shows that. But Dundee beat them twice. The one of them was a draw, and United won the other one. So... the one they get in the Tankins, they were when back the 14-15 season, they finished 6th in the league, but they took 6-2 off United, 4-1 off United, 3-0 off United. They were taking all these Tankins, and they weren't really. The United were a better team than Dundee, but Dundee had a good team themselves, and they were getting battered for United. The only
You're not going
time
into that same dread anymore, don't we? No. It's, as you said, Martin. There's nothing like a derby feeling, no matter what derby you're a fan of. There's nothing like that feeling, whether you're at the game or sitting in the house watching or down the pub. It's a lot easier down the pub because you got the old the courage juice.
Yeah, it makes it a bit easier, does it?
Of course it does, yeah. So there is nothing like a derby feeling, and that'll be definitely in full flow come Sunday. But as we said earlier, I'm not really too sure anyone's going in with any enormously high expectations of either club.
Don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's maybe a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
Jack, last week I set you the challenge, which I've obviously set everyone else to do our best 11s that we've seen. after, because I'd already done mine, I said I would do a 9-man bench, and I ended up doing a 9-man bench and honourable mentions. Now, your 9-man bench and your honourable mentions were optional. You wanted to read out your best 11?
Yeah. Okay. So I've also got a bench and honourable mentions.
Yeah.
So my centre mid pick is probably going to be very questionable, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So in goal, I'm going Benji Siegrist. Left back, Robertson. Centre backs, Webster and Foyut. Right back, Mark Wilson. Centre mids, Barry Robson and Dylan Levitt. Attacking midfielders are Armstrong and Gold, and up front will be Hunt and Russell. On the bench is Zaluska, Douglas, Keith Watson, Jimmy Gomez, Prince Blabin, Conway, Swanson, Daly and Chifshy. Honourable mentions are the Man Monk Simultowski, David Goodwillie, Jean Dufuux, GMS and Lon Shankland.
Okay. Neil, what about yourself? What have you got? Now, as I said earlier, Neil is slightly older than us, so he'll have players that I won't have because we've have to have seen them. So on you go.
Yeah, goalkeeper's a bit controversial because of the Speroni factor. I've went with Rad Douglas.
Okay.
What he did at Dundee's first spell was fantastic. What a goalie. He went on to do much bigger things in Dundee, of course, and coming back for the second spell, it really helped us out through a lot of real tough times with the administrations, yeah, and I say administrations. Yeah, so Rad Douglas in goal. I went Johnny Hernandez at left back. None of you guys will remember him. He's kind of from that sort of post-Benetti era. He's a dab, but he's my favourite dab. Lee Walkie. Lee Walkie at centre half. Barry Smith I've put at centre half. I know he was predominantly more a right back, but what he did for Dundee over the years, a tremendous servant. Goes without saying, he's got to be in that team somewhere. And their lack of good centre halves over the years, probably going to be a lot to play from. I went for Zurab Kichinishvili at right back. Again, short spell at Dundee, but a really, really good one before moving on to the Rangers, obviously, that are no more. I went Ian Anderson left midfield, again, before you guys' time.
I seen a washed up Ian Anderson when he come back.
Yeah, his first spell was just brilliant.
Was he no the youngest ever scorer in the Premier League for a wee while? 16-year-old he scored.
Could well have been. His delivery from corners was and he scored from corners as well. Yeah, great player left midfield. So Nibzadze in the middle, along with Morten Weghorst. You guys will know the Denmark coach Weghorst. I knew the player Weghorst before he went off to Celtic. Just a young lad at the time, mind you, but what a player. Right midfield, Darius Adamchuk. Again, before you guys' time, but what a player. Couple of spells at Dundee. Really, really good player. And up front, goes without saying, obviously Kanija and my favourite, Juan Sara. I've not really done subs. I mean, a few honourable mentions. It's kind of a bit of a attacking, again, with the lack of good defenders over the years. I've went, Gary Harkins, tremendous servant for Dundee. Noah was the best player in the world, but what he did for Dundee and at Dundee shirt was fantastic. Gavin Ray, a wee bit before you guys' time again, but what a career he had at Dundee and various other clubs. Caballero up front. A lot of boys will be screaming at me, how's he major first 11, but my boy was Juan Sara, so I couldn't leave him out. Ravanelli, short time, but kind of leave him out. Speroni and Ketsbaya.
There we go.
Yeah.
Can't argue with any of them. Martin, what about yourself?
So I've obviously got my starting 11, and I've not made up a bench, but I've got a good list of notable mentions. Now, I've tried to go a sort of 3-4-3, but as you'll hear, it's not really the strictest sort of formation. I've just went with defenders. I've not really sort of categorised them into left backs or right backs. So I've went in goal with a guy who played for us 2009-10 season for half the season before we signed Dusan Pernas. That was the guy Nicky Weaver, who was at Man City. Fantastic goalkeeper, absolutely brilliant between the sticks, but we couldn't have got a player like him and kept a hold of him, but he done the job for us for 6 months, and like I say, the best keeper I've seen at Tannadice. Defenders, I've went for Andy Robertson, Andy Webster and Keith Watson. Midfielders, Gary Mackay-Steven, John Rankin, Stuart Armstrong and Ryan Gold. Strikers, John Daly, Johnny Russell and Lawrence Shankland. A lot of good players in there, but I'm looking at the honourable mentions as well, and even now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, could a few of them maybe have been swapped? And I've got no doubt that if I was to give it a bit more time and think about the squad, there'd probably be a few names getting put in and maybe moved into the honourable mentions. But on that mentions list, I've got Benjamin Siegrist, Paul Dixon, Gary Kenneth, Sean Dillon, Craig Sibbald and Will Ferry from the team that's playing now, Craig Conway, Bobbin, Gomez, Danny Swanson, Nadir Chifchi and Noel Hunt. A lot of players there that have maybe not the best football players, but boys like Sean Dillon, who was an absolute servant to the club, every week gave everything he had, left everything out on the pitch, an absolute proper professional. Guys
Gentleman
like
as well.
He totally is,
Yeah.
Andy Webster, potentially the best captain I've seen at Tannadice. I remember the 2009-10 season, there wasn't a moment in the 90 minutes when he wasn't screaming out orders and screaming at players if they'd put a foot out of line. A real captain and a real sort of old school football leader that you didn't really see so much on football pitches nowadays. You always heard him shouting. And like I say, there's a lot of players in that notable mentions list that played in the cup winning squad. Conway, Bobbin, Gomez and Swanson. I think my starting 11 is maybe 11 best individuals, but if I think of the 4 players that I've mentioned that played in the Scottish Cup squad that 2010 season, I think that was a better team. They maybe weren't as talented individually, but as a team, I think they were a bit more streetwise. That team that, players like Ryan Gold, John Rankin, Armstrong and Mackay-Steven went and played in. That's a team that I think went about 11 or 12 games without a win, and I just couldn't see the team from 2009-10 doing that, despite the fact that there wasn't any players that were individually as good as these boys, but far more streetwise on the pitch. But they didn't make it in at my starting 11 because I'm probably the kind of guy that sees a player that can do a few step overs and score a few goals and get totally mesmerised by it.
So I'll do mine now. I've put a right structure into mine. So if I went 4-3-3. And I've also structured my bench, so I've had the goalie, 2 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 strikers, and then I'll have my honourable mentions as well, so I'm a bit of a shadow. I've went with Speroni in the goal. I seen Rob Douglas the second time he was there from when he signed to when he retired or when he left to go forfeit. And
wasn't the same. There were 2 different keepers.
Yeah, probably 2 different keepers. But Speroni for me was, in out of all them players, he was one of the heroes for me when he used to come up to the Bobby Cox with the game and all went like that.
Like you said about Dylan, just a total gentleman of a guy.
Yeah. Went to his testimonial. It was a great night. But I've went with a back 4, right back Barry Smith, centre backs Jack Hendry and Zurab Kishnasvili, and left back Owen Beck. I really liked Owen Beck. What a player he could be if he keeps himself fit. 3 in midfield have went Gavin Ray, Georgie Mzadzi and Glenn Kamara. And a front 3, just off the right Greg Stewart, just off the left Caballero and through the middle Steve Lovell.
Steve Lovell. Some great Derby days.
Subs have went Rob Douglas, Lee Wilkie, Gary Irvin, and he did get a full back. And to be honest with you, I probably should have went with Dave Mackay, but Gary Irvin, because he was in the Defiant team, I went with him. He could play either side as well. Kevin Thompson. Now, we touched on the game earlier on where Dundee won 3-1. Heffernan got the Derry shot. That was the first time Derby did one in donkey's years. Kevin Thompson run that game by himself. He was caviar football player. See, if he didn't get all the injuries he got, he would have been Premier League in England. He was that good.
But he wouldn't be at Dundee.
No, he wouldn't have been at Dundee, and he couldn't keep himself fit, and that was the reason why he was at Dundee.
What a player.
Kits Baya, Gary Harkins, Nacho Novo, he probably should have been in my team, but because I'm bitter, he's in my subs.
Like just a horrible individual, isn't
Yep, Lee Griffiths and Juan Sara.
Lee Griffiths.
Lee Griffiths the first time, no, when he was fat the second time.
Yeah.
Honourable mentions, Scott Bain. I thought for a couple of years he was a good goalie for Dundee. Johnny Hernandez, Charlie Adam, Kevin McDonald, Beto Carranza, Luke McCowan and Kane Hemmings.
Yeah.
So
there wasn't a lot of new guys in there for me, guys,
No.
because I was of a privileged position to see a lot of these guys I mentioned back in the day. And as of late, especially as of the last sort of 10-15 years, there really hasn't been much to shout about in terms of a Dundee team. Charlie Adam was great to see, but it was more because of what he did at previous clubs. It was an honour to see him, like, sort of thing. Not for he was good for Dundee, don't get me wrong, but
he got them promoted.
He was fantastic, but it was more about what he achieved in his career before Dundee, which was the best bit about seeing him, I suppose.
So yeah, that's what we are our best 11s. That was a good wee challenge. I'll put on screen everybody's teams in a formation as such, but we'll move on to our next topic, which is, as always, the Futbology challenge. Now, hasn't been a very great week for us all, Jack. You have the only points picked up of the week. Now, your game was a game that you spoke about a few weeks ago. It was Dundee United 2, Maipa 2 in the UEFA Cup at the time, second qualifying round. Now, because it was a draw, you get your point for the draw. I don't know if there's much you remember of that you didn't mention the last time we spoke about it.
I literally only remember their 2 goals at the end to draw level and being miserable after it. Yeah,
so Adriano was the man who scored. Now, it was on the 25th of August 2005. There was a attendance of 9,374. The managers on the night were Gordon Chisholm and Irka Makale. I'll not go through the Maipa team because that's going to take me about 10 weeks to pronounce all these names. But the United line-up that night was Derek Stilley, Alan Archibald, Mark Wilson, Paul Ritchie, Stuart Duff, Barry Robson, Grant Brebner, Mark Kerr, Colin Samuel, Jim McIntyre and Lee Miller. And the bench was Craig Sampson, David McCracken, Gary Kenneth, Greg Cameron, Barry Callahan, Stevie Crawford and Billy Dodds. Martin, it's probably a wee bit before your time, but is there any of that match that you remember at all?
Not really. That was kind of before I started going to the football regularly. I'd only been to a handful of games before the 2009-10 season, and luckily the Maipa game wasn't one of those.
Well, Martin's not had a game on this occasion, so he picks up a 1-0 forfeit defeat for the second week running. Bit similar to me, but I actually had a game. I had 5 games to choose from, and unfortunately this was the one that was picked out the hat. It was 25th of August 2018, St Johnstone 1, Dundee 0. A crowd of 4,259. Tommy Wright and Neil McCann were the managers. The starting 11 for St Johnstone's Xander Clark, Scott Tanzer, Joe Shaughnessy, Jason Kerr, Ricky Foster, Dre Wright, Murray Davidson, Liam Craig, David McMillan, Tony Watt and Matty Kennedy. For Dundee it was Jack Hamilton. This is just sending shivers down my spine. The first 3 weeks we've done this, I think, I've had 2 games for this fucking season, and this is the worst season ever.
Jack Hamilton,
Jack Hamilton
definitely sent shivers through your spine, that goalie.
Stephen Cocker, Josh Meekins, Nathan Ralph, Jesse Curran, Glenn Kamara, Carol Madianga, Paul McGowan, Adil Nabi, Benjamin Shalman and John Mendy. The bench isn't much better. Parish, Jeffries, Kerr, Ingwatala, Spence, Musa and Whiten.
Seen worse lineups than that.
No, you've not. It was terrible. So I'll put the results and the current league table on screen now so you could watch it. We'll wrap up now with Jack. Any final thoughts before the derby?
Just I hope United pump yous, that's all.
Well, there's every chance. What about you, Neil?
Yeah, obviously hoping for a Dundee win massively, but from somebody like yourself, Martin, that lives in a different city now, the Dundee Derby's always done themselves proud for the city. Just enjoy it, go mental, but be on your best behaviour, do the city proud.
And especially with you living in Edinburgh and Skinner almost living in Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Derby isn't exactly the most exciting fixture in the world, is it?
To be honest, it's not something I particularly look forward to. I love a derby of any kind, really, generally speaking. But the Dundee Derby, I think there's a massive hatred for Dundee as a city in general across Scottish football, from all aspects of Scottish football, and it doesn't get the respect it deserves, the Dundee Derby.
I'm going to jump in there and say that I think the Dundee Derby is the best derby in Scotland.
Yes, I would agree.
I would have to agree with that as well.
Yeah. What about yourself, Martin? Have you got any final thoughts before the game this weekend?
Like I say, I never really get too nervy before the derbies, but when I'm listening to it or watching it, as soon as the referee blows for kick-off, my backside will be clapping. But really, it's just one of these ones that'll be anybody's game to take, and without sounding too cliche, I know that's a bit of my speciality, coming away with the cliches, but it'll be whoever wants it more on the day, I think, yeah.
First goal's massive.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first goal's massive, especially if United get it, because Dundee didn't look like they're going to score. So Dundee need to score the first goal, in my opinion. It's weird you say that though, Martin. Just quickly before we wrap up, watching the games when you're there compared to watching the games on the telly. I hate watching football on the telly. I get dead nervous watching on the telly, but when I'm at the match, I don't. Like,
I get nervous watching it on the telly as well. Watching that Rapid Vienna game, the away leg, I'm sitting there on the couch absolutely shitting myself, like, drawn 2-2, going into the stoppage time, you're like, oh, please hold on to it, please hold on to it. I think when you're at the ground, you kind of get caught up in the atmosphere and you're maybe distracted from those nerves a wee bit.
Yeah.
I think you almost get a false sense of control when you're
Yeah.
at the game.
Yeah.
You do feel like you're in control, which you're absolutely no way, shape or form in control.
No.
But I think when you're there, I would agree with you guys. Yeah.
When I go to the matches, I never get nervous, right? And the only, like Martin was saying earlier, when Dundee came up in 2012, and I've been I was 16 at that time, and so becoming an adult, and every Dundee derby as an adult, I've only ever missed one, and it was when they played United in the League Cup group phase, and it went to penalties. And funnily enough, I was with Martin and I was with Jack, and we were in Magaluf at the time watching it on the TV, and I couldn't sit still. I kept standing up, going away for a drink, coming back, sitting down, standing up. I just could not sit still. When I'm at the match, I just stand there and I'm quite the thing. It's just a weird thing. I don't know what it is about it, but yeah. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us, Neil, and thanks very much, Martin, for coming back, and hopefully you'll be back soon.
Sure I will.
We'll maybe get you on for a Scotland special, or we'll definitely see you next time the derby come round.
Sounds good to me.
Jack, thanks very much as always, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Good man. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, could you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? Follow our socials on X/Twitter. It is at SandemanSTPod, and on Instagram at TheSandemanStreetPod. Thanks very much for listening, and hopefully we'll have a great derby. Cheers.